November the 29th, 1964. And a number of our friends got married. Each 2 weeks it looked like somebody was getting married. And all of us had an African relationship, so Africa has been an important part of putting us together. Rosalind, my wife, was the first person to go to link up with Africa. That was 1960. And then I went in 1961, then we met. So I think she should have a chance to say a few words to the family. So, in Arena, 44 years, she needs to get an Olympic Medal of Honor. 44 years with an African.
Well, praise the Lord, praise the Lord, praise the Lord, praise the Lord. 44 years, 2 fours like that, a 4 usually in Kemet represents the foundation, the cardinal points of the earth. And so that there's solidity, or at least knowledge of the universe and some kind of a structure that has been built. And so that in this marriage, I tell you, it's been a long time looking through, looks like the decades and the growth and development. And if there's one thing that's super important over those years and over those times, I would say it's the prayers and the connection and the relationship with God, because that is what keeps you growing and going. And that although you are in partnerships and in relationships, human beings have problems all the time, all of them. None of them seem to be perfect. And so therefore you need to be able to stand up on your own 2 feet. That those north, south, east, west, you have to see your God force as the cardinal point, the center within the circle and the center within that square or whatever rectilinear shape that may exist. Because you have to have something that's greater than yourself that keeps you in the flow of where you ought to be and where you ought to go. So that there's a certain amount of humility to life itself, a certain amount that you have to be receptive to so that you are in the right flow. If not, you're in the wrong flow, and it's too easy to get rigor mortis or to become stiff and die. But if you can keep that body, like the people in the science and medical world say, that you need to have that blood flowing, not any cholesterol clogging up this, that, and the other that would have caused you to get heart attacks and strokes and things of that sort. So that to know that there's something greater than you are keeps you limber, and you knowing that the times come when you can blank out, and if it's necessary, and your God will continue to carry you forward. And that is the way that our organizations must be. And UAM is one that stands on the principles of righteousness, right, and truth. Doing truth to each other and building, seeing the truth in all the mendacity around us and all of the lies and whatever it is. If it's in the medical world, lies. If it's in the court, lies. If it's in the police, the military, it's lies, when they do come up. And so that to stay on the side of truth means that you stay on the side of life. That you say in the center of that circle, in the center of that triangle, in the center of those shapes. And that's why in Africa they hold the dotted circle as supreme, representing God. The God force is represented in Kemet by the dot in the circle, and they say that's Ra. The symbol of Ra, if not just the circle by itself. You look down to the people of the Belantiki, of the Dogon, and one of the major symbols that you see in the mud cloth, I don't see anybody wearing mud cloth tonight, but you'll see sometimes a rectilinear shape like this, which represents the forts. The forts, guardians and protectors, and you see it in the mud cloth of Mali. Then you'll also see those dotted circles. And so that is a symbol that becomes the gele, the dot in the circle become the gele, which is the voice of God, which becomes a drum. It becomes a rhythm. The word of the God force that comes out amongst the Akan is called a nubier. It's the King of Kings is the dotted pattern that you see on the Adinkra symbols. And so thus, we as an organization in UAM, no matter what the world say, we know that we must stand in the truth, and the words that come from us must be those words that come from a wise leader, like Alton Maddox, who will not bend to the right or to the left because it becomes popular. And so that when we have a president like Obama, we must know that he could only be in that spot unless the forces of the universe had made a decision to move him. So I think he's in a movement and in a wave that is a wave that's part of our history, and those whose shoulders we stand on to put him in that spot. And so now we're going to see whether he, as an individual, sticks to the truth like UAM sticks to the truth, and not compromise away those who have whose shoulders that he stands upon. And so that we're always constantly in going back to find the truth. So Leonard and I got married. I think y'all heard the story I told a long time ago that I went to Africa, yes. And one of the stabilizing forces that would be the dot in the circle of the marriage is indeed our love for Africa, for our people, Africa in the New World, and the Holy Ghost that Leonard says is Africa itself, the spirit of truth, the spirit of the Ankh, of life force, the spirit of the dot within the circle. And so I met Leonard when he was down at the United Nations talking, and I said, oh, there goes such a handsome man. And I never remembered what he said, but I just knew that he was such a handsome man, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I tell you, I used to make programs in those old days about the Congo. I used to organize panels and things, and Lumumba was hot in the news and in the issues, and I organized a program and Leonard, so that Leonard could come and be one of the speakers. And so Leonard came and he brought his big fat girlfriend, and so I said, and she was very intellectual. And so I said, and I didn't consider myself a big-time intellectual. I said I was more artistic because I used to paint more in those days. So I said, I don't know. Oh, he likes those kind of women. And I crossed them off my list. But the organization that we were involved with, Operation Crossroads Africa, ended up putting 3 people together because we were in New York to go out and speak. And so we grew on each other, functioning for Africa and for people. And that became such a common and a strong tie in working with organizations that wanted to build up our people at the community level, the local level. I was a Harlemite, he was from Newark. And also the international level, because when I met him back then, he used to wear a suit and tie. He was at Columbia University fellow, and so things changed, but our love for Africa did not change. And so eventually, when we saw that we grew on each other in such a complementary way, then eventually he had to go and ask my hand for marriage. And so he came to my father, and my father had to kind of like look him over and everything like that. Now my father, what happens is that individuals sometimes are staged in life by certain individuals. If not, then the plan of your life may be staged by destiny or the ancestral or whatever. In the way that Hakeem Jeffries, our nephew, was staged for life by his father, because his father's deep inner wishes was for political office. And he even ran for political office. And his mother and his father were both social workers, so that the child that came out of the womb and was developed was around those wishes and ideas of the parent. And so, too, he became that, in the sense that Obama came out and his wishes and desires was for the community of people that was in him, probably from his father. Whether his father was around long enough or not, it got into the genes, and so that's what he became, you see. So when he graduated from Harvard, then the neighborhood was yet there that he went running to fulfill that true sense of who he was. Leonard's mother put into him, because here comes this dark child, and she looks at it, and she'd had a love for Africa through the Garvey movement, loving black, loving the image of Marcus Garvey. And so Leonard was staged by those wishes of her. And you see, these wishes and ideas from the parents that begin to work in marriages are very important. I was talking to the woman in Guyana, not this year, but last year, and she was telling me about an interesting situation I was studying, continuing the study about the mother and child image in African art. And so she was telling me a mother-child story about pregnancy, and she was saying that she, an elder, was saying that a young woman they knew and relative was sent out to kill a pig, you know. Went out with the axe, and you know she was aiming for the head with the axe, but she slipped and she cut off the leg of the pig at an angle. And so it was squeaking and hollering and all that kind of to do. And when her child was born, it was born only with one leg. And the other one was as if it was cut off at an angle. And so this is to say that when you find people who are in the pureness of who they are, the thoughts and the ideas are so strongly embedded in the subconscious and the psyche because of these melanin bodies, or whoever you are. If you are living with a kind of a trueness of your blood and your spirit, these things take impact. And so that's why we're missing it at this generation, not teaching our young women how to be young women, and the young men how to be young men. We can't be using abortion as contraceptive, you see? And because these are human beings with ideas that get embedded in them. So if you want greatness, you have to be like Hannibal. Hannibal's father is the one that said every day to that child, "We will conquer Rome." The child was born knowing every day, so strong with these. So it's not wishy-washy ideas, should I, shouldn't I, or what, this, that, and the other, or hip-hop here and there. I want to be like a gorilla going like this, you know, whatever, kind of to do without the thought. You know what I'm saying? Or imprisoned in the wrong way. So you have to be projected. Marriages are similar. That's why, excuse me, in traditional Africa, you individuals don't necessarily marry in the old days. What they do is you marry, families marry. They come together, families come together. And why? Because it became a business deal for everybody to grow and to develop, and you were gearing people and projecting them toward stability within the community, the organizations of the community, the clan and the groupings, you see? And so that when Tony Browder and Jan, his wife now, wanted to get married, they had two marriages, one in Africa and then one here, you see? And so the one in Africa, Leonard and I participated in, and we were part of it. And so they thought they would just go in and have a nice little African marriage and, had the drums and the clothing and the dress and all of the fine things. But what they found out was that first, each one of them had to be adopted by a family. And so once each was adopted by the family got to know them and to work with them. And so when the marriage comes along, they do what's called knocking on the door ceremony. And so he comes with his group and his entourage and family, knocks on the door of her family, and two families come together. But by the time that family had got, I don't know if Mother Poinsettia was there or not. You were? And so anyway, they what happened was they got to know Jan. Well, she owns property in Washington, D.C., outside of Washington, D.C. She's thrifty in business. She's good looking. She knows all of this stuff about how to do everything and the technology. Why should we give her to him to get married? We could keep her and she could teach our people to be like she is, etc., etc. And so Tony said, well, what did I get into here? And so he had to eventually talk his way out of that thing. He had to promise that he was going to give them an airplane. Now, Tony Browder don't have an airplane to give away, but so that's on the books for one day that to happen. And so that original idea was that you had networking of families getting together, people come, and not just flimsy love and romance that might die away when you change outfits. You're in love with this man because he's wearing the latest bell bottoms and the latest, labels. Or you wearing this, like this girl, because she got the latest wig on, the this, that, and the other. And, down the line after, you had a little fling, you're ready to go fling on to somebody else. And so that marriages had to be very solidified that way. And so that of the various types of marriages, I would say that Leonard and I weathered these varying kinds of periods through basically that dot within the circle, our interest in Africa. And so that my interest, my father, I was instilled with things to do with my father because he was the African. I wasn't striving to be African, etc. My father was a dark man, and I ended up getting a dark man like Leonard, probably because of my father. It was so ingrained in there until I wasn't, I just knew that was the right thing to do. And no mistake. My mother was light. But anyway, and my father was not the kind of man that would come and be petting on you and hugging on you and sitting on his lap and all of that kind of sweetie sugar. He was the kind of Congo man that had a presence and a sense of power. And I do remember sometimes even running and hiding under the bed. I wasn't afraid of him, but with that kind of power, you knew to keep your distance sometime. He was a Masonic man. He was a quiet man within. But when he wanted to talk, you couldn't get away from him. He could out-talk Leonard. Leonard could hardly ask him for my hand in marriage because he kept talking and talking. And every so often I'd catch myself doing that to students, looking them in the eye. Now, I was tired today. I was ready to go home, and I didn't think I could say anything at all, didn't I, Leonard? I said, well, what can I say? You said, you got to say talk. I said, what can I say? And so my father was that Congo, in Congo, there's a kind of Congo magic, and I teach some of that in my class in the African art, the meaning of the Inkisi, the nail, the Kondi, the nail to awaken God. To awaken God's presence. The kanga, like the Haitian says, tie them up and to stop evil, to know what truth is and to stop evil. Those kinds of things, and the sculptures that showed the hand on the hip. And watch out, or you just put your hand on the hip like some of those Congo sculptures, and then take your baton, and twirl the power, etc., around. And so that's why to this day, we don't like anybody taking their hands and twirling them like this, the finger, because it represents that Congoisms in the New World. So I remember all from growing up, all of those things that I didn't understand about Congoisms until I studied. And I said, well, that's my father. Well, my father didn't write all the dates and the times and things when my father was participating doing those things. And so he was a Masonic man back then and had all of his to do. He carried a gun because he was later on he wanted the power, be a private detective too. And when he was over 70, he went out and bought this baddest looking motorcycle. And we were scared to death and didn't want him to ride it, etc. But he had it was his status symbol. And so here comes Leonard, you know, his little suit and tie and stuff like that. And, you know, my father didn't think, oh, you're going to marry somebody, you don't have any power, you don't have any Masonic symbols. What you got going for you? Like Africa? What kind of symbols you got? At that time, you know, Leonard wasn't interested in Masonic to-dos. Oh, you got, what is a piece of paper from this university? You know, is it going to do us any good or whatnot? But anyway, Leonard did eventually, poor boy from Newark, no money. He didn't have any gold to bring to the table for us getting married. Didn't have any silver, had nothing. All he had was he was going to one day get a job in Newark with the Job Corps thing. And so, but eventually Leonard did help them get a little house back then. Houses were cheap in those old days and down in South Jersey. So a boy with paper from Columbia University ended up being okay to get married with the prospects that one day, like Tony Brown, one day is supposed to get his airplane. So a po' boy from Harlem, from Newark, and one day is supposed to be wealthy. I don't know if I'm going to end up getting my gold mine out of this man or not, or my diamond mines out of this man or not, so that now my father's dead and gone. I don't know what happened to it. He was supposed to get it and present it to my father, but it didn't happen. But anyway, we are saying that the networking, and when people become corrupt, then they started to say, I have a daughter, I want to sell her off in marriage for thus and thus amount of money. But it wasn't ever supposed to be that a material operation as much as a networking. Like in Garvey, it was never supposed to be one little Garvey organization, but the many, many, many organizations that he had, the press, the UNIA, the Milliners, United Milliners, the Africa Zion, the Black Cross Nurses, and the many, many organizations that could network and work together. And so that when we can purify ourselves, let our God purify us enough that we can join, then this can be the rightful thing. So that my mother, she was the one that loved family. And she loved organization. She helped to organize some of the community people around the housing problem that they had when it did come about. But my mother had 5 children. And so my aspirations, I guess I just automatically knew, since I was so close to her, that I would end up with 10, you know? And so, because I was a teacher, I went into teaching because I had this feeling, because I helped to raise those 5 children. And I was a little girl, I did everything. I didn't know other girls did what I did. Went shopping for 7, cook for 7, go to the laundry for 7, and all of that. So I didn't know other girls didn't do that until later. And so I learned to do a lot of things early. So I automatically knew I was going to have many, many children. But in our marriage, we end up having many, many children. And they were the children that were the students. They were the children of families, of our families who had needed extra help and support. It was Derek. When Derek Jeffries was growing up, he was a problem sometimes, but he came and he lived with us. We had another one, Reggie, from my sister's side, young Reggie, came and said, Uncle Lenny, can I stay 2 days? And it was ended up being 2 years. And so then when we first got married, we inherited a young boy, 14 years old, the day after we got married. Or was it the marriage night time? And then he was from Mississippi, from Gabon. And he came here. Dr. Robinson had him, and he didn't know what to do when he was going to Pineywood School. And he had this guitar, and he could just go for a few little sounds, and it'd be such that it was so strong and powerful, it could knock you out. Got into with that Mississippi growl blues sound mixed in with Africa, and it would knock you out. And then we lost that boy. We lost that boy, didn't know where he was. He just disappeared when we supposed to be taking care of him for Dr. Robinson, etc. And Leonard ended up looking all over the city and ended up finding this boy on the Apollo Theater with Joe Tex. He was up there, you know. So that's just like a little taste of what our life was like. So we ended up children that became the sons of Africa, and they became even people from Africa, Simon, who had come to UAM a number of times, and Sampoué from Ivory Coast again, and we had some in Africa, the Ethiopian, what's his name, Leonard, from Ethiopia, our young student fellow. So we end up having these children and children and children and children all over, and the marriage became compounded with levels and levels of working, such that eventually organizations, we played key roles in developing organizations with NCA and with ASCAC, developmental roles, and with African heritage studies and giving. And so this man here would even give away the mortgage money.
Still doing it.
And he would give away, every kind of to-do. I don't know anything like this. So in order to come through this kind of stuff, you got to have God. You got to have God and be in the wave of things that God knows what's what. And so that anybody I know around the city here and those some students were at one time so poor they were like sleeping on the floor of some dingy apartment when Harlem had all of these dingy kind of places before it looked like it looked now. And they'd be going to Dr. Jeffries. Maybe he can help you out. And sure enough, they go to rent money. But I'm not complaining, because if I was an ordinary woman with good common sense, I'd be following all of these things, and I would have been long in the insane asylum, long time ago. But no, I would go to God, and God would say, I got your back. You're mine. I love you so much. I'd do anything for you. And, if I get so that I'm half dead on the bed, half, sick or whatever, I know what each time got me up. I know what each time got me up. So what does that mean? You're blessed to be that close to know what it is that resurrected you and got you going. And that is so very, very important. Like I see our brother Ralph Carter here in that play he did, Grandma Hands. And Grandma, prayers can go through when you can't go through. And he didn't know whether he was going to make it here and there, like many of us here been on our deathbed. But we know that there was something valuable and divine got us up, and we're walking and talking, and here we are. And we are blessed when others have passed away. And so that I see Leonard, I probably talked too long. Leonard. No. Oh, he said no.
No, there's a 2-for-1. They got 2-for-1, so we're going to stand.
That if you're able to stand, and when every single thing on your chart says this is wrong, not right, and you go, and God still said, keep on going. Why? Because sometimes even the most difficult situations that are impossible, you got the Hells Angels coming after you. You trying to set up a black studies department in San Jose, in California? I mean, what you gonna do? Somebody dies, and the whole struggle and the thing is there, and here I am, you know? I mean, I got so nervous that time. That was the end of nerves ever getting nervous, because I had passed the limit. And so after that, I mean, nothing to be scared of, you know, that you in the hands of the Almighty. So that there are indeed many types of marriage. And I would just, Senator said, since I don't have to stop right this minute, I'll quickly go through, and you can catch me at another time when I can elaborate even more. But I heard a psychiatrist say that there's ludus love. There's stoic love, there's narcissistic love, there's eros love, there's tantric love, there's familiar love, there's mania love, and there's agape love. You have all of these different types, and so the marriage patterns are after these types. And we need to study relationships and forms like this, because you have strong people and strong marriages, strong families. It makes the greater UAM. As you know, I'm talking to the choir. I mean, we already have the camp going, knowing that we are redeeming children and bringing them to their proper senses. And so ludus love is where you put the intellect over the heart. And so some of these are your intellectual kinds of marriages. They battle with each other, fight, people fighting to find out who can outdo the other all the time as far as the mind is concerned. But that's not correct. You have to deal with the heart. In Kemet, the heart is where you have to deal. Out of the heart comes the issues of life, right? And the issues of life are negative and positive. So you have to guard your heart, like you renew your mind continually so that it don't go off into these strange kind of things that we know some intellectual minded people go off into. And so that you have to take care that out-ib, that is the hieroglyphics has it in there. That's why I study the hieroglyphics. It gives you concepts and ideas that are so deep and ingrained in the psychology and the psychic of life. And so that you weigh that heart continually over the affairs and the things that you're doing. And that open heart, the circumcised heart, is the one that God demands that you have. And so that you're not in relationship guarding your heart and it's so tight and you have closed it, and so you're playing out games with each other. You know, these marriages and these situations where people are playing tit for tat, strange games. And then there's stoic love, which means storage. If you do this for me, then I will love you one day. You know, many situations like that. I was in a situation like that. I felt with my mother. I learned better when if you love me, you would go shopping. If you loved me, you know, and yet there is such a thing, if you love me, feed my sheep. But you have to be very careful about getting entangled in matter and affairs of the world and anger, so much so that your heart is not correct. It's a storage. One day I'll have time to be romantic and look at the clouds and the flowers and relax back, and one day I will. You need to do it now. Buy yourself some flowers and do it now, and have the beauty of love. Then there's narcissistic, where you are in love with love and can't see anything else. You know, and you didn't really love me, says one of the partners in a marriage. You're just in love with love. Anybody could have been here, anybody or being or something like that. It's not me. You don't even know me. Do you know me? How much do you really know me? It's just a figment of your imagination and your fantasy that you have built up, maybe over some old Frank Sinatra movies or something like that, or some old, whatever the modern movie things are. That's what you are living out, and don't even see me. You're looking past me. And then there's eros, where it's just dumb and physical. You fall in love. Fall in love. Yeah, fall is a fall. A fall means you have fall from your good senses, your mind up here, and your good heart, and you fell down to the genitals and whatnot, and you got some little Cupid baby up in the sky, you know, with an arrow, a sharp point.
He was gay.
A sharp point ready to shoot you. I mean, no. Real love don't have any guns and weapons ready to shoot you, and so that you are not in your ordinary human senses. So it's a dumb thing. The weapons and of warfare and love don't go together. And then there's tantric, you know, where you have learned the proper positions and things like that. And there's a certain amount of truth about the physical body awakening and connected with the spirit and body and the mind body. And as in acupuncture, they don't know exactly. They know the meridian points, but they don't know what the healing, how the healing is done with acupuncture. All they know is you awaken with the pins, and in Congo with the nails, you awaken the spirit body, and the intelligence superior, universal of the spirit body, knows how to heal what it created. And so that is the truth of that. So that if the tantric is related to that higher form, okay, but if the tantric is nothing but exercise and gymnastics and feel good, then it doesn't reach ultimately the plan of your life and the destiny of your life that is universal. So if it doesn't, then you don't experience the proper spiritual orgasms that you ought to have to connect the body, the vibrations with the universal vibrations that would be those shimmering and vibrating and rhythmic forms of the universe. And then there is familia, which is family. And that's the kind of love that exists in Africa a lot when they say familia, the family. You marry within the family, and eventually you will learn that this is a lovable person because it went through the rites of passage and knows how male to treat the female and the female to male, and thus within a context like that, you grow to love within the family. And then of course there's mania, which is sick and crazy love. Mania, crazy love, which is bipolar, and it's an obsession that your sickness relate somehow with the sickness. You were alcoholic, and that one was partial out. The two alcoholics got together, and you scratch my sickness and I scratch yours, and there we go together, staying sick rather than getting some help and getting well. So that's what we say, bipolar extremes, the neuroticism that kills, and the psychopath within psychopathic kinds of relationships with people. And then there's agape love. Agape love is the God kind of love, and many people don't want that because it's so high you can't handle it. It's like the love that comes zoom down like a force, like the Zambezi River. You know, who's God in Congo area? Nzambi. And Nzambi is the high name of God Supreme. The Western world said, oh, it's a zombie at the graveyard, you know, and made fun of God Supreme and brought it to laughter and foolishness. Yeah. But the idea was that if you have a spark of God in you, if you have a mustard seed, if you have a little bit, that little bit is so much it can resurrect you, cause you to rise. And so that was the original idea. But agape love is like turning on a water faucet. Here it comes, zoom, wonderful and great, the force of God, like the Zambezi River, like in Nzambi. But what happens if both couples are not under that same unction and anointing? Then it doesn't quite work like it ought to. That's the kind of love that a mother may have for a child even, or for a son. And here's the son that done got on drugs, opium, heroin, everything, and stole everything from you, and you still, oh my boy, I I love him so much. And he done this, that, and the other, has killed somebody, and oh, that's my boy. I'm still, you know. So it doesn't turn off. Oh, he's in prison. Forget about him. Let him die in prison. Agape love goes out to the prison to get him. You know, so that one day, that kind of love, it was like somebody prayed for me. Somebody had me on their mind enough, or an organization cared for me. They had me on their mind enough to daily come to the prison, come to my spot and pull me out of the mess that I was in when I could not help myself. And so that is what we call agape love. I mean, you don't give up, practically ready to give up, and here it still is. No sense, no reason, no rhyme. And so we do have at UAM that kind of love for our people. We do not give up on our own. We do not give up. The whites have given up this, that, and the other, etc. That someday, we always believe, something will happen because of the course of the universe. And in this final statement, because there's a dot in the circle. Because there's a dot in the square. 44 years anniversary, a dot in the square, a dot in the circle.
Okay, let's give up. Stand up on your feet. Give my wife some acknowledgement. Brother Rosalind, get ready. Raise up UAM in another consciousness of what we should be all about. Do anything important, you're supposed to ask an elder for permission. But I done got so old that most of the time when I'm speaking, ain't nobody there to be asking. And Brother Gittins, may I have permission to speak? Okay, Brother Gittins, working with that spirit of Malcolm X, and he worked with Malcolm, a new Malcolm, back in the day, and he's traveled to us, to Africa many times, and he's invested in the hotel that we have. So, Brother Gittins, I appreciate you allowing me to speak. I always have trepidations on asking for permission to speak because there are two brothers who have proved the success of African brotherhood, Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark. Now, you can always depend upon Dr. Clark. He was faithful and loving forever. And I know if I asked Dr. Clark for permission to speak, he would say, certainly, brother. You've been sitting at my feet, and I want you to be able to speak your mind. I've always had trepidations about Dr. Ben. And I've always been afraid to ask him to speak, because one day he might say, no, Negro, I'm tired of you. But given us. We need to celebrate the great victory that Dr. check1 has given us, and a whole host of others. And so tonight is a celebration of our victory, not just the victory of an Obama, but the victory of African peoples who are in a period of what I call the Great Awakening and are reclaiming their heritage and restoring African humanity, which is our great mission. And so that's what I try to teach my students, and it's difficult because they came in for a grade. I tell them from the beginning of the class, don't worry about the grade. I'm an egalitarian. All of you all come in with the same grade. You come in, and when I look at all of you all from the different countries and lands that you come from, the different colors and shades, the different so-called races, all of you all are equal. And you come in with a C for colored. But then once we get going and lay down the ideas and the concepts and the books and the materials and the history, then you have a chance to work up to a B for black. And if you really get excited and really get inspired, then you can work up to that A for African. Some of you all is going to do African work, but it ain't going to be real work. It's something that you copied off the internet and you cheated from somebody. So your A is an A for ass. Now, I believe in the law of opposites, as Dr. Ben taught us, and as it exists in the world. And so you can go from that C up to that B. You can hit that A, boom. Or you can go the other way. From that C, you can slide down to a D for doofus, darky, and Dominican. So that's the Jeffries grading system. Now, if you see they came after me again to remove me from the college, you'll see they got plenty of grounds. And they may come. But at this point, I've been there 36 years. I'm ready to go. But I want to go in a storm, in a whirlwind. I just don't want to go out as a whimper. So I hope they come. Now, we have a family at UAM. We have a family that we need to tap into that went through our processes at City College. UAM is celebrating its, what anniversary? 20th. City College is celebrating its 40th. In the fall of '68, the students met Kwame Ture, who was Stokely Carmichael at that time, and Rap Brown, and they were inspired by them. And they said that you need to get yourself organized, you need to get yourself mobilized, you need to get a leadership, you need to get a plan, you need to get a program, you need to have a critical analysis. All those things that Attorney at War Automatics is talking about, these youngsters began to do, and they formed a committee of 10. And then they organized another 100 students under them. And then in February, they had their analysis ready, and they made demands on the system. February the 5th, I was teaching in the political science department. There was no black studies at that time. 1969, February the 5th, the students made the demands on the faculty, senate, and council. And the demands were not accepted, but they said they would consider them. And at the same time that the students were doing, as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, it never will. And you have to raise your demands if you want something to happen. And so the students waited patiently, but in the meantime, they were in my class, and we were studying about black history, black revolution, black struggle. And by March, the response had not come forth. There was a lot of delay. People did not want to give in to the pressure from the students. But the students were coming off of a flow of activity of African peoples through the 60s. And they knew they were on the right side of history. And so by the end of March, their words and their demands were not properly received. The negative reaction was kicking in. So the students said, let's go to Plan B. And Plan A was to make demands respectfully and to wait for a response. Plan B was to further intensify the contradictions and the action that's necessary for something to happen. And so they took over the South Campus. The end of February and into April, they held the campus for 3 weeks and blocked the college from functioning. It was a student strike, civil disobedience. But from that came one of the greatest educational achievements of our people. City University, which had some tens of thousands of black and Latin youngsters. From that point on, 69, 70, 71, 72, the City University was expanded to an institution of 280,000 students. 180,000 of them were black and Latino. The greatest institution for training our people in the history of our world. And we were in the middle of it, developing the largest black studies program in the world. And it all was deconstructed. There's still a large black presence, but it's not a conscious black presence. There's still some black faculty, but they're not struggling black faculty, not committed black faculty. There's still a black studies program, but when I leave, the lights go out. But fortunately, we did not fight for just a department. When the fight was for something for our people to participate and have this education institution service our people, that fight was just. But there were benefits from that fight that students had not anticipated. They didn't know, as we went in and demanded change of admissions, support for the students, counselors, expanded SEEK program for aid, and a black faculty, and a black studies, Asian studies, Latino studies. They didn't know that we would be tapping into the greatest body of knowledge in the history of the world. And it would be exposed to our people and our students, and we would institutionalize it in the classroom, but more importantly, we would institutionalize it out of the classroom, in the homes, in our culture, on the programs such as Gil Nobles. And so the greatest contribution these students made was to open up this enormous body of human information about the human experience that is our story. We've been told that we don't have a history. We've been told that we don't have a story. Our story is the white man's glory. But as we began to be exposed with Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark and all of the others, we began to see this enormous history, that history is us. And everybody comes out of our history. And everybody is a mutation out of our gene pool. And so the greatest contribution that these youngsters made was to be a part of a world movement of opening up Africa to the world. So that's what my course is all about. And that's what I was laying out for those who came last Saturday, and we'll be continuing it this Saturday, and I'll be touching on it tonight. However, it would encourage Dr. J to reach down deep to come up with something strong like I did last Saturday, because Alton gave a lot. He sat there for about 4.5 hours, sat on that desk and was in that classroom very comfortable and surrounded by his books. It looked like Bill Mackey, Professor Bill Mackey, always traveled with 2 big bags of shopping bags full of books, and Alton was in his glory. And he was talking about how we have to get our minds, and we have to develop this understanding of critical thinking in order to make the right decisions about our life. So he was so good just being there. That inspired me to reach back. And so I came across with a couple of hours, maybe 2 or 3 or 3.5. And people just sat there because they didn't realize they had been zapped with a double blast of Africanness, the likes of which they had never had in their life.
Yeah.
I am sure they had not sat anywhere for 7 hours and got a blast of Africanness like they got Saturday. Now, hopefully we'll be able to continue this on a regular basis and develop a community forum that expands what is done at UAM and develop workshops off of that community forum, which will help us organize our communities, help us organize the young men. We need a session where we say, don't come here without bringing in a young man or 2. You got a nephew who ain't correct. You got somebody else who... We should have a session where you can't come here in February or January. In fact, January. The January session, unless you bring in a young man or 2, you ain't going to get in. So that would force us to reach out to our young people. And we're dealing with this Obama phenomenon. And it needs to be studied. It's not Obama mania. We had all that enthusiasm that people have had. But now it's time for Obamology. Studying Obama and what he did and how he did it and what can be done with it. Even if he can't do it, we can do it with our mind. We can project where this historical moment needs to go. He doesn't appreciate and understand the wave of history that's moving him, but he has, of course, his other deep understanding. But there's a wave of history that is moving him. He can't see all of the ramifications, but we can have workshops and whatnot and see where this thing needs to go. He can't raise the question of reparations. He wouldn't stay in the White House. Even the Negroes serving him up pancakes. We say, brother, what are you doing? Put some alga syrup on that pancake and stay away from those reparations. Take my advice. I've been a Negro serving the White House for 50 years. And reparations ain't going to get you nowhere. So we can't expect him to raise reparations. But we have to do it. That's our obligation. If we don't have a reparations program, we need to call it quits. There's no united African movement unless reparations is a part of it. There's no African education for liberation unless reparations is a part of it. There's no plan for the future unless reparations is a part of it. You see how reparations work? The banks just got it. The insurance companies just got it. The automobile people have just got it. The investment bankers just got it. Reparations is a part of life, but we're afraid to even raise the question.
That's right.
So we've got to change our consciousness with this wave of history that we are benefiting from. Now, I hope to go deep tonight, but I don't see you all enthusiastically putting nothing in those envelopes. I saw Brother Gideon. I saw Brother Giddens pull out $1, and he quickly slipped it in the envelope and then licked it closed. I said, well, dog, Brother Giddens, I expected him to be looking for more money in his pockets, you know. Brother Giddens, you know I'm messing with you. The last time I needed some money, I asked Brother Giddens for $200, and what did Brother Giddens do? He gave me $200. I ain't gave it to him packed yet. But it's that type of relationship collectively that will move us. Yes. We've got all of these obligations and programs that we're working in Africa. In Elmina, where slavery started, where you have your reparations, your first reparations documentation is Elmina. I've been made a chief there. My wife has been made a queen mother. They're going to be calling me Monday. Did the people contribute anything? Will you be able to send some school fees for these 29 kids that you've been taking care of for all these years? It only takes $1,500 to take care of 29 kids. $1,500. And I had a Negro in my class last week when I asked him, this brother from Mali. I said, brother, what is that you got around your neck? Oh, Dr. J, hey. It's what they call it, bling bling. So I said, how much did it cost? Well, you know, it's $4,000. I got it for $2,000. So I wanted to slap him. In fact, he moved far away, so I couldn't get up my little crack. Boom! My little karate kick. But one brother had enough on his neck to cover 60 children in schooling in Ghana for the year. Wow. What that should tell us is that our money resources that we consume, all of us collectively, the worst consumers of garbage in the history of the world. Yes. If we knew how to save some of that and plan to use it for important things that are important for us, we could change our world. That's right. That's our internal reparations. We definitely need external reparations. We need to put that on the table so everybody in the world, all these immigrants coming in here, including those ones from the West Indies coming in here, need to know about reparations. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Did you hear what I said? I'm tired of people coming here from Antigua and Guyana and Barbados, puffing up their butts and putting up their chests. I'm better than you all here in America. Well, why are you here? Going back down to the damn island. Our grandfathers shed their blood here so there'd be a way for us and the African family. We've never said, you ain't from here, you can't benefit from here. Right. People in our city university, most of those youngsters are from the West Indies or parents from the West Indies. And nobody ever thought that we should just limit that to African Americans. Because it was an African family approach that we had. And that's what we got to have. You got the most powerful black community in the world right here in Brooklyn, and it's impotent. It's impotent. That's right. Because it can't feel Africa. That's right. It can't do Africa. It can't transform into Africa. How many years have we been marching up and down in September on that Eastern Parkway, the greatest power potential in the African world, and it's worse than Rio de Janeiro's carnival. 2 to 3 million people coming together without a plan, without even the thought that you need a plan. And when Professor Scobie, my partner, went to them and said, we need to change the formula we need to deal with reparations. Can you imagine if we had a parade up and down the Avenue Eastern Parkway and the theme was not shake your booty, not jump up, but was reparations? What vibrations would be sent throughout the world? 2 to 3 million black folks talking about reparations. And if you don't give us a dime, you don't have to. We're going to organize our wealth and our money to service our people. Reparations, 2 to 3 million people. We can control every election that occurs in New York. We can influence every election in America because the people come from all over to be a part of a jump up, grabbing their genitals and carrying on. There's no economics, there's no politics, and there's no culture on the avenue. There's no economics, there's no politics, there's a showmanship on the avenue. If you got 2 to 3 million people who come in every year, and you know that the hurricane's going to come every year to beat up on the Americas because of what they did to Africa. So that whirlwind comes every year. We don't have a hurricane fund. You got 2 to 3 million people. When they come next year, tell them each to bring $100. If you're going to spend $2,000